All the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind, besides which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. And later on in the same work, he says, this one mind alone is the Buddha. I got this question and it really got me thinking about how to teach and really how to learn. If you're on the spiritual path, there's a certain amount of willingness to probe deeply, not just into ourselves, but also into our conventions, the way we think, the way we act, the motivations and the ideas behind all of that. And probably one of the biggest ones is this word mind. And what triggered my thinking about it, and I got several pages here of notes. I don't know if I'll get through them all or not, but what triggered it was a question I got from somebody. Their name on YouTube is Sleep Anxiety, which kind of tells you all you need to know. But he says, hi, GP, I really like your videos and also the ones with Lisa. Your videos and also this one helped me a lot with OCD. Now, OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, where things become very repetitive. You have to, you lock the door 3 times, it becomes kind of ritualistic, and like it's a way of the nervous system for staying safe. I've known several people that had that. So thank you very much for your content. First of all, say English not my native language, so sorry if I make some mistakes, which you didn't. It was perfectly fine. I have OCD, and a close friend of mine has anxiety disorder. We get to talk about the fact that all of the psychologists and coaches always say something like, the mind works against you, and you are not your mind, etc. This can sometimes make us believe that there is us and that there is this mind and that there are these 2 separate units. I think this can sometimes cause us more anxiety because we begin to think that we have to defeat the mind or that we're at war with it and we have no control over it. But on the other hand, when we experience anxiety or intrusive thoughts, the feeling that we feel is that we really don't have control over it. And that only reinforces that belief that we controlled by the mind and we have to fight with it. So how do we exit this loop of thinking or belief? I'd really love to hear your thoughts about it. Thank you very much. Well, you're very welcome, and you're about to get my thoughts on it. I really started to probe deeply into mind and how the different meanings that it has, and how it's become such a negative thing rather than what it should be is either neutral or another name for the self. We think of it, the saying there that mind works against you, right, does create the sense of there being this entity, this thing that we have to vanquish in order to be happy and prosperous and all of the things we care about. Somehow it's at the root of all of our problems, but it's not actually true. What is at the root is not mind per se, but conditioning, that is persistent patterns of thought. But let's dive a little bit more into it. That notion that the mind is your enemy and you have to vanquish it in some way or control it or do is relative. It's a relatively modern idea. People didn't think in those terms before. It was just your thinking, right? The conditioned patterns just went on. But we have woken up. We've waken up enough as consciousness in general that we understand that that's not really true. We didn't used to think it. Then we started thinking it because we realized that these conditioned patterns of our minds were really causing a lot of mischief and a lot of problems. And so now you can take another step back and see it as nothing but conditioning. It's like, Siri or any of the voices that appear on your on any of the devices you have in your house or your phone. You can ask it a question. It's just a program. There's no entity there. It's just a functioning, and that takes you to a level of abstraction about it, because if you can see it as functioning, it's no longer a thing. It's not an entity that we have to deal with. It's not a problem like that per se. It's not something we have to do battle with, which is really difficult. And if you think the mind is one thing, and you apply a very different kinds of techniques or processes or something to heal that, to go beyond it or whatever, you're not ever going to be able to get the results because your understanding of it's off. You're doing something to it as if it were one thing, and it isn't that thing. So you're never ever going to get the results for it. So think of mind as the word for it is abstraction. It's like the wind, right? We say the wind that blows. Well, there's no thing named wind that is the wind, and I'm blowing now. There's no thing there. There's only the blowing. And wind is an abstraction turned into a noun for that which is not a noun. It's a functioning. Mind is the same thing. The word mind refers to nothing but the flow of thoughts. That's all it is. No thoughts, no mind, when you look at it as an abstraction. So mind represents thinking, and forgive me if I refer to my notes. I got a lot here. And you can see how powerful it is in terms of healing and growth when you recognize that, it's just a functioning. I keep getting caught up in it as if it were myself, because Siri uses the word I. Right? Siri says, I don't know. Thank you. This is what I feel really good today. Thank you. But there's nobody there. If you realize that is the way the thought patterns work, there's an enormous amount of freedom that comes from that. And so then the term as an abstraction becomes quite generic, right? It's the same term, good thoughts or bad thoughts. Like the wind, right? The word wind, if it's hurricane force winds or if it's a gentle breeze that you're really enjoying. So mind, like wind, is neither negative or positive. It is simply a functioning, a functioning without feeling. So then there's another way of looking at mind, which is the traditional way in which Buddhists look at it. In Chinese, the symbol for mind and the symbol for heart are the same symbol. There isn't this kind of division in our feelings and our thinking that we have here in the West. And in Buddhism, they actually use the mind the way modern spiritual teachers like myself use the word consciousness or awareness. In fact, here's a quote from a 19th century Tibetan Buddhist master named Patrul Rinpoche. He said, "You won't find the mind by searching for it." Or I can add, trying to control it. Mind has always been empty. That is, it has no inherent meaning. There's no need to search. It is the very one who searches. Simply settle, without distraction, directly into the searcher. Now, that's a completely different way of looking at it, isn't it? Right? Oh, mind. There's me, and what am I looking for? I'm looking for the pure essence of myself. And he's pointing out that it is the mind you're looking for is the one who's looking. So settle in even to the searching. Now, this is from Tulku Urtagun, another Rinpoche, another of the Tibetan tradition. He says, our Buddha nature is never separate from our minds. Here's one from Huang Po, a Zen master, 900 or something like that, very older one, yeah. All the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind. besides which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. And later on in the same work, he says, this one mind alone is the Buddha. So now we hear when somebody says something, the mind is working against you. They're giving you a concept of mind as an entity. They say you're not your mind. Still giving you a concept of your entity, although it's an open door to a little bit of freedom there. When you see it as a function, then you see it's just, you don't have to pay attention any more than to what it has to say, because it's just repetitive. It's just doing what it was programmed to do. And you can clearly discern that that programming isn't really adequate for who you are now. That recognition of that is what they would refer to as the Buddha, as pure mind, as real mind, as pure consciousness. So in this sense, mind, self-awareness, consciousness, pure being is all the same. So now you can see, the reason I'm going through this is so that we don't get tangled up into words. I don't want you hung up on the words as if words had some absolute meaning. They don't. They change constantly. And so we're kind of in the business of discovering, well, when I use this word, what does it actually mean? I don't want to have assumptions about it, because if I do, it's going to end up leading to behaviors and attempts at healing and awakening that are going to be futile. They're not going to work. So let's see here. I don't need to talk about that. Throw that note out. Any others here? Yeah. So mind and consciousness, pure mind, essential mind, is the same. They're the same. Right? We're trying to get away from the thought patterns and definitions of myself that have been conditioned by the patterns of thought. So that when the word I appears in your mind, and it appears all day long, even if you say you, the I is implied, isn't it? Right? Because it's second person, right? There's no you without an I. So everything you say, every thought you have revolves around this sense of I. It would behoove us to know what the hell it is. What are we talking about, right? So hopefully as I'm speaking now, you get a sense there's no entity there that we have to deal with. There's only our concepts that we have to deal with, and how we have become dependent upon and entangled with and identified with a sense of self or a sense of I that is nothing but a thought. Right? The thought I represents a functioning, which is the functioning of the sense of self within the body-mind mechanism. There's not actually an I there. The I is always the one who is seeing. Again, remember what Patrul Rinpoche said, mind has always been empty. That is, it is free of any inherent nature. There is no need to search. The very one who searches. It is the very one who searches. And this is a really good one. This is a practice right here with, again, from Huang Po. He said, if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, the Buddha will appear before them. For this mind is the Buddha, and the Buddha is all living things. You notice the activity that you have right now, the questions, the sense of seeking, the wanting to know. Right? Sink directly into that sense of wanting to know. Right? Don't turn it into a quest, but instead turn your attention towards the one who wants to know. Right? That's far closer to the one who knows than the one who then simply focusing on the seeking itself. I'm not saying put a stop to seeking. Don't. Not until the mission is complete. But turn the attention from the seeking to the seeker. We don't have to stop the mind. We only have to recognize its true nature, which is, in fact, the nature of all things. The nature of mind is all there is. Nothing but mind is a Buddhist tenet. Putting a stop to conceptual thought, don't do it through a battle, but by recognizing that's all it is. Patterns of thought, nothing else. You find your mind is the Buddha. That is the true nature of all things. Buddha is not a person that existed 2,500 years ago. That's the historical figure who represented it. Like Jesus was the historical figure that represented Christ, which is the true knowledge of being. So if we think of ourselves as the I that appears in the mind, it's going to be a foe. It's going to be an enemy, right? Mind is empty, remember? So if I see it as something I have to deal with, it's my enemy. But if I see it as something like, oh, I can change my thinking and manifest everything I want, the creative power of the whole thing, now it becomes a friend, right? Mind is just flipped, right? If we think of it as both, or excuse me, as both, yeah, we're stuck on the wheel. We're forever ping-ponging back and forth. Is my friend or is my foe? Is my friend? Is my foe? Right? This is Shiva's wheel that we get stuck on. And if we think of it as neither, try to think of it as neither. There's a denial of our own experience, which is nihilism, which is you get kind of lost in the nothingness or stuck in the absolute. And in Zen, they would say he stinks of Zen, because that's exactly what happens. So there's really no need to think of it at all. There's no need to rely on thinking, only on seeing. Okay? Your mind, like everything else in the universe, when it is boiled down to its essence, is self. It's you. It's who you really are. Mind is an aspect of this fullness and expanse, this indefinable expanse of being. It's the aspect of, you could think of it as just the active creation that is emerged out of that which is unborn and uncreated. That's the true mind, the true self.